y'all. Welcome to my new setup. I'm going to get close to the mic here. My hair is doing something weird, I think, today, and I'm filming in a new room, but I'm trying to get this set up where I can just make content and I can just walk in this room and sit down so that I don't have to go through so many steps that prohibit me from sharing things I want to share more and more. I have so many thoughts about the Oscars and I just watched Love is Blind in Sweden. My brain is just like, I would just want to share so many things, but it's a little challenging when you have the dog's making sounds and the phone's going off or the mailman's coming. So I'm hoping that this back room setup will be better. I came across an article mostly because one of the videos I couldn't share here, and I think it's only on TikTok, is a video I made with a voiceover about the qualities around autistic traits in women, especially around needing to be alone or seeking refuge in being alone. And I wanted to understand and share more about why I think that happens. So I found an article based on a paper from someone who is a PhD, I believe, still a PhD candidate in England. And the paper is titled Reacting, Retreating, and I'll link it down below, Regulating and Reconnecting, a summary of findings from Florence Neville from February 2022. So it was basically looking at understanding, and I think there were 16 people that were surveyed that were autistic, trying to understand why alone time was important for them. And so let's just go through the terms and define that alone time in this paper means three things. Number one, you are by yourself and you will not be interrupted by others. Number two, you are in a space that you feel comfortable in. And number three, you are able to choose what you do in this time and space. And this is what Florence found. Number one, that part of being alone is in response or reacting to social and sensory overwhelm. And this is really important because I think that no matter how you identify on the spectrum, most people have a need for some alone time in some way. And what we really want to do here is start to prioritize it, value it, and stop shaming it, and find ways to create it. So the participants were often overwhelmed by social and sensory input and needing to mask. Remember that masking is really about having to be mindful of really the face, the literal face, the world, the energy you're presenting to the world while you're managing a brain that doesn't necessarily want to engage in the social world or rules that way, right? So you're being mindful of managing the input of sensory stuff. You're being mindful of how you're expressing yourself. So the definitions are that social input, managing social input, could be verbal or nonverbal communication. And it says that it wasn't always a problem, but difficult or intense or long periods of being in a social space is often physically and emotionally distressing. The second one is sensory input. This is including things like distracting sounds, bright lights, and uncomfortable temperatures. Some sensory input was distracting or even painful. And in social spaces, as I was mentioning in the last video I made, it's really hard to control the input. You cannot control if you're at some event and it smells bad, or you're in an office and now someone's microwaving their food. This was a huge issue for me, and before things changed a few years ago, that I had an office that had an ocean view, but it was near the bathroom and there was a microwave in that area. And I would have my door closed, and every day I would smell things that made me so angry and dysregulated. And then trying to manage that while seeing patients was actually really difficult. And even when I changed to a different office down the hall, my sense of smell is the greatest curse, and very common of those who have autism or on the spectrum, that it's like rage-inducing, much like misophonia is, which is the sound for people's mouth sounds and chewing. It literally is a rage response. Okay, so sensory input, difficult to control. And then masking means behaving in ways that made non-autistic people feel more comfortable. It included performing, being engaged or switched on, I'm listening. Performing different social roles or personas. Oh, now I'm being the psychologist versus, the mom in the classroom. Making small talk. Hate that one. And stopping themselves from stimming. So it says that trying to do all of that often made the participants feel exhausted and overwhelmed, even if it was someone they loved. And I've said this, that there are times when even with my own kids, and someone asked me, how did you raise 4 kids with all that sensory trigger stuff going on? And I honestly don't know. But now it explains a lot of why I'd be sitting there and trying to hold on to like, just listen, just pay attention, just get them to bed. But really feeling like, oh my God, I'm going to freak out if this goes on much longer, but not wanting to show that, especially because I had an unsafe parent who had a lot of rage and anger issues and irritability. So trying to hold all that in, I can really see why I would isolate so much in the very small amount of time if they were ever gone. I really would almost always choose being alone. So there can be a lot of discomfort, pain, confusion, difficulty happening. The second reason why people with autism often like to be alone is to retreat from social and sensory distractions. And so this research says it was very important for them to have safe spaces to retreat to, away from social input, everyone coming at you or needing to mask, and negative sensory input. Safe spaces help recovery also from overwhelm. So locking the door, getting into a quiet space, and the safe spaces could include clear, minimalist spaces, spaces where the temperature, lights, and sounds and smells were controllable, cozy, comfy spaces, interesting spaces, or spaces where there are preferred activities like a puzzle to be done or maybe art, things like that. And then there were also safe spaces outdoors. And so these outdoor spaces provided happiness, safety, and inspiration. Natural spaces away from other people were often places where people feel less inhibited, places with sensory input that felt good, and spaces to think clearly. One of my favorite things to do when I'm doing it is to go walk by the beach. And it happens to be near, just because it's where I live across the street from a big resort. And there's nothing I hate more. And even though it's outside, and this is going to sound like, I know I'm going to sound like a complete jerk, but when you live in a tourist town, it's different all year until the summer or holidays. And then it's like there are people everywhere, and their trash is everywhere. It's just different. And I'll be like at the park and I will sit on this bench. I should find a picture. And so it's a huge area. And there's these little sections where it's like a tiny, like 2-person bench. And I'll be sitting on the bench. And it's just like dirt and gravel. It's a very small area. And there are plants around. And I'm clearly sitting there alone by myself, sometimes crying, whatever I'm doing, thinking, feeling. And people just walk up and stand in front of you. And it's very clear. It's not like it's the large social space area. And it's stupid. I should just be like, oh, well, whatever. They're just here to visit. But it can be like, I get pissed. It's just like, what are you doing? It seems so rude to me. Like you're in my personal space, because it literally is like, I'm in my kid's room and it's half the size of your average bedroom or even less, right? The point is that we're outside, we think that we're alone, but I have to be more inhibited or aware, because it's not the same as like in, March when I'm sitting there as it is in the summer, that's life. That's fine. I mean, whatever. It's not my space. But the point is, it doesn't feel as regulating and relaxing when I do it when people aren't there, if that makes sense. And I got kind of off the road there. The last one is regulating, recovering, and recharging. That being alone allows us to become immersed, like deeply involved in an activity that helps us recharge. And so these immersion activities often get us, and you've heard the term the flow state, where we just feel like we're just in our zone, and it kind of is a Zen feeling, and it's relaxing, and we're not necessarily having to think about anything but where we are in time and space on our own, not in response to time and space, if that makes sense. And so these immersive activities in this research project liked things like making music, hiking, researching things, gardening, bike maintenance, diving, crafting, and gaming. And that one of the things it does is when we're in these flow states and immersive activities is it's helping us process thoughts and emotions, anxieties that have built up, or just giving us a break from that overthinking, overfeeling brain. So we can be focusing on details. In fact, making videos, researching, losing myself in that way. It can have sometimes an anxiety provoking component, but other times it's like really interesting and fascinating. And it's another way to manage emotion. They often mention even being behind a camera can be helpful. And then fictional worlds. So this idea I've discussed in the last video I made about the often, I think, misexplained or misunderstood traits of autism, that there's something about being, whether it's watching shows again or watching fictional stories. I love so much online content in terms of binge watching shows and movies. I really do. And it just relieves stress. It's enjoyable. But if I'm watching something that am like, it's not satisfying, I feel dysregulated, Nothing better than losing myself and discovering some new PBS miniseries. I've been in this whole like period piece situation lately where I've been watching them on Amazon, buying them. I guess they're on PBS. Maybe they're on Peacock. I should figure that out. But anyway, just like losing yourself, and it can be all kinds of fantasy worlds, from romance to, whatever genre you love, right? A lot of fantasy worlds, especially, where there's like magic and creatures and, just things you can't even dream up, but then people do, right? And so all of that, what that does is it helps people get ready, lastly, to be actually more social and to reconnect with others. Because it's not true that everyone who has this neurodiverse pattern doesn't want to be with people and only wants to be seeking refuge alone. It's that we need to do all these things to get recharged, to re-engage with the world. And so it also says that people tended to find that when they were ready to reconnect, they found the most enjoyment in smaller groups based on a shared interest or with other neurodivergent people. And then the activities were things like walking, making music, going to music festivals or shows, crafting, watching movies, any activity that everyone kind of feels less triggered by and from a sensory place or understands each other can be really helpful. So I thought that was important because I think that so much of that I couldn't figure out, like, why am I such a loner? What is wrong with me? Why do I do these things? I really understand more and more that the combination of my nervous system, of trauma, of my brain, that there's nothing wrong with it. And in fact, I need to find ways to prioritize it, to not shame it, and to get the most out of it, right? So to try to make sure that if I'm going to take a few hours on a morning when I should be making content, maybe I need that. And historically, I'd be like, what is wrong with you? Like, get it together. Why do you want to watch Love is Blind Sweden right now? And instead being like, you know what? You need to do this. This is how you're going to calm yourself down. And then I know you're probably going to work, which I almost always do on the weekend, on content. And so whether I'm researching things, writing videos, making videos, this process takes a lot of like, maybe I edit something and it sucks. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to post it. Or I film something like this right now and I have no idea what the light's going to look like. Is all my makeup going to have like all the creases showing? Is that going to bother me enough to where I post it or don't? It sounds dumb, but like it gets in your head and it takes a lot of time. So that can be enjoyable, but also stressful. Anyway, the point of this was to say that it's okay if you need time alone. This was also inspired, I should have said at the beginning, by one of my highest rated videos. I think it is the highest rated video. And I don't even know that the video itself, I've tried to figure out what it is why those with complex PTSD isolate. And I think the information is really important and good, and it's a short video. But also I realize now, a couple years later, that maybe why I also seek refuge is also related to my lifetime brain responses to everything and everyone. So anyway, thank you for being here. Please stay safe and well. I appreciate you so, so much. I know that many of you have been here for so long. I meant to respond to someone's comment, and I'm going to go back today, hopefully. And they said, gosh, your contents, you've evolved so much. I've been here since the beginning, and I just appreciate that so much, that you tolerate my, mic issues and my talking 90 miles an hour. I really do want to keep growing, but it is a process. And so I appreciate you being here with me during it. And whether you're just joining or you've been here for a long time, I appreciate you so much. So thank you so much. Have a good day. Take care and stay safe. Bye. She finds refuge in being alone. She's an introvert. She has trauma. She has CPTSD. She's autistic. But what is she really? She's someone who finds extreme relief when she doesn't have to go anywhere or talk to anyone, answer calls or leave the house. But sometimes that will make her feel guilty and like she's not doing what she should be doing. When someone comes to visit, even someone close to her can feel like a threat. It can feel like too much. And even knowing that someone isn't a threat doesn't relieve her anxiety. She has feelings of dread about upcoming events from the moment she wakes up that day. And when she thinks about all the steps it will take to leave the house sometimes, it's incredibly exhausting. She has to mentally prepare herself for outings, excursions, meetings, and appointments, often days before an event. She's often questioning her movements and next steps, and sometimes it feels like she's on a stage and having to act out the right steps, even when she's alone and no one is watching. Knowing that she can stay home all day brings great peace of mind. And being at home is truly a refuge, especially after being out and about. It takes her a long time to recover. Her downtime is sacred to her. She often feels guilty about spending too much time on her special interests, but often loses herself in the process. There's often nothing more comforting for her than being in the safety and comfort, the softness of her own space, able to do and say and think and let her mind wander, or to do something just like baking banana bread and then letting herself sit down and peacefully and silently eat that banana bread alone. She does love people and she loves deeply, but she just needs space and time and refuge. And if you love her, you will give that to her without resentment, but with grace, never letting her forget how truly unique and special and loved she is. Despite her chaos and mess, she is still incredibly loving and beautiful to you.